Look like a villain. Crazy villain. Just a game, doesn't it? Heard back. Hi, I'm your badass bookworm, Cassandra Dallas, and I have with me today Aida Salazar.
Aida.
Aida.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was one of my questions I was supposed to ask you before I hit record. I have your book, The Moon Within. It was going to be our book club book, but book club has been waylaid this month, like everything. But I thought I would start by just reading your bio from that and maybe a little bit about the book so people know what we're talking about. So Aida Salazar is a writer, arts advocate, and homeschooling mother whose writings for adults and children explore issues of identity and social justice. In addition to her debut, The Moon Within, she is the author of the forthcoming books, The Land of the Cranes, and her debut picture book, Jovita Wore Pants, the story of a revolutionary fighter, all published by Arthur A. Levine Books. Her story, By the Light of the Moon, was adapted into a ballet production by the Sonoma Conservatory of Dance and is the first Chicana-themed ballet in history. She lives with her family of artists in a teal house. In teal? In Oakland?
In a real teal house.
Where's your real teal house? What part of Oakland? I'm in the Fruitvale.
Yeah, you're in the Fruitvale?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm off of 35th and MacArthur. Like,
oh, yeah.
There. Yeah.
We're not really far apart at all. Yeah, cool.
Like, do you know where the food mill is? Near the food mill? Do you know food mill or Lord's Ice Cream?
Oh, absolutely.
Right there. Yeah.
I'm right off of Fruitvale.
Okay.
And so this book, you said, is a middle. It's not a YA. That's teenagers. Is that right? I don't really know how.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. No. So the way it breaks down is that there's picture books that are usually for like 0 to 99 years old. Anybody can read any of these books actually, but it's mainly for children in elementary school and younger. And then there's middle grade that kind of like overlaps between 9 years old, 9 years old to about 12 years old. And then YA begins right at 13.
I got it. So YA is probably a little more racy because it's like things that or it can be or whatever, the middle age. So this is gonna be perfect for my niece.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm gonna pass it along because I'm always excited to give her books and be like, oh, I'm friends with the person that wrote this.
I know that person. I know. Mhm.
So I'm just gonna read the inside of the jacket. That's what it's called.
Mhm.
I couldn't remember for a minute there. Sally Rivera's life swirls with questions about her changing body, her first attraction to a boy, and her best friend's exploration of what it means to be gender fluid. But most of all, her mother's insistence she have a moon ceremony when her first period arrives. It's an ancestral Mexican ritual that Mima and their community have reclaimed. But Sally promises she will not be participating. Can she find the power within herself to take a stand for who she wants to be? So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that. Is her reason for not wanting to be part of it because
Because it's embarrassing.
it's embarrassing?
It's
Okay.
yeah. Her mother is kind of like this, you know, returning to her roots. She's trying to connect to her Mexican indigenous roots,
Mhm.
and she's doing it through ritual and ceremony. And her daughter, you know, Sally does not want any part of that. She just, you know, because in a moon ceremony, you have to kind of present yourself to the community of women and elders, and she doesn't want anybody to know her business. So, you know, she's
Okay.
very private. Yeah.
Um, because I was wondering if it had to do with the not wanting to be gendered so hardcore.
Well, actually, so it's her best friend who is beginning
Uh-huh.
to really come into their own, um, really kind of beginning to understand their true identity, which is or their gender identity.
Mhm.
And so she and her best friend kind of like the same boy but for different reasons, and then they conspire to win the boy's friendship. But when the boy, you know, they finally meet the boy, he's a bigot to her
Oh,
gender fluid best friend. I know, he's terrible, he's
uh,
terrible. So she
very
has to
realistic.
decide. She has to decide her loyalties, right? So she has to figure out if, you know, where she's going to land, and then of course, you know, inevitably face her her menstruation and her mother and
Well,
all of that.
I feel like most indigenous societies have coming of age rituals, and that maybe it's something that we're missing
Oh, for
now
sure,
a
for
lot, right?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah. I
that I
think
wanted anybody to celebrate whether I was having a period or not.
right.
But
Well,
becoming a woman or becoming a man or whatever the
yeah.
transition is, yeah, I can understand the value in that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think well, in the book there is a poem at the very, very end of the book that was kind of shown to me through one of the accuracy readers, one of the people who were reading for fact checking my book.
Mhm.
And his name is David Bowles, and he's a translator of Mesoamerican languages. And he said, you know what, I translated this poem called Flower Song for Maidens Coming of Age. And it's from the Yucatec Maya. And so, and it describes a moon ceremony like so perfectly and so beautifully. And that's proof. And it was written in 1440 before European contact. And
That's
so that's proof.
incredible. I'm
Yeah,
looking at it right now, but I mean,
yeah.
that's wild.
It is. It's really wild that's like really the only living document that we have in the Americas of a moon ceremony. Um,
Wow.
I know, it's really powerful, and but it's just but I think that, you know, if you look at the Americas and you look at the world in general, like, so, you know, one of the arguments that the mother is trying to make to the daughter is that she's connected to the moon, and that you know, there's no way that menstruators can't be connected to the moon,
Hmm.
because, you know, our cycles mirror the cycle of the moon, and because the moon pulls water, we are water. And so these connections are something that kind of we're starting to re-understand about ourselves. But almost all cultures understood this about the relationship between menstruation and the coming of the moon. And so, and you know, I think there's a line in the book where the mother says, you know, she's like, because the girl is mixed. She's Afro, Puerto Rican, Mexican. And she says, well, you know, I'm not fully indigenous or Mexican, or, you know, my dad is Caribbean blood runs through me too. And she said, and her mother tells her, but the moon, you know, the moon belongs to all women, you know. And what, you okay?
Yeah, I just realized, I'm sorry, I have noise in the background. How rude of me.
That's okay.
I just turn things on to keep me company. Sorry.
So anyway, so yeah, so I think it is something that we don't understand, but I think it has to do with patriarchy, right? If we think about patriarchy and how they've relegated our menstruations and the functions of women's body and menstruating bodies to shame and secrecy and fear, right? Like, you know, people who don't want, you can't publicly talk about menstruation. You can't, you know, and really every single human being comes from a menstruator. But patriarchy has not allowed us to kind of embrace it, you know, or talk about it. And the same with, you know, and that goes hand in hand with these kind of very puritanical beliefs that religions across the globe have kind of, you know, beat us down into submission, you know. And so it turns out that we're not talking about our menstruations, and when in certain religions, women are not allowed to enter the temple if they're menstruating, or they're slapped on their first menstruation. So there's all of this like violence against women that and menstruators who that we've suffered over the years. And I say menstruators because not all women menstruate, you know, because when we begin to think about our expanding genders and our ideas of gender, that, you know, kind of shatters this only women menstruate, you know, philosophy that really isn't accurate any longer. I mean, hasn't been accurate, but we need to stop, you know, equating womanhood with menstruation. You know? So anyway, that was a long
that was fantastic.
question. I mean, answer to your question.
No, you're putting the pieces together, connecting the dots for us. Because yeah, I mean, definitely Christianity, yeah, many religions, there's a lot of shame. And even if you don't grow up in a religion, even, there's a lot of shame. And yeah, it's just, it's a really weird thing that we can be so private about when everybody does, you know, yes.
You know, but you know, there's a bigger movement now. I mean, I think we're seeing the topic of menstruation come up more and more in certain feminist activist spaces, you know. And again, you know, there's something called a period, the period, what's it called? Period, the movement or something like that. It's this coalition of youth-led people who are trying to combat period poverty, because they discovered that a lot of youth don't have access to menstrual products because of poverty.
It's expensive.
It's very expensive. And so, and this is, and just in the United States, but across the globe, imagine, you know.
And also you know, your living situation, I remember like living with my father and being afraid to ask him to get me that, right? Yeah. I sent my boyfriend to ask my father.
Oh.
That's crazy. But there's a lot of situations where it's not accessible for people.
It's not. And so there's now a national period day. There's a fight against taxing tampons, because they're taxing, you know, menstrual products, but they're not taxing
like it's
things
a luxury.
Like shave. Like
trust me, it's not a luxury item. Nothing luxurious about it.
It's not. And so there's a lot of kind of talking about period empowerment and period knowledge and stuff. And then also, I think there's a big phenomenon of a lot of women who suffer. They have very painful
Yes.
menstruations, and that also makes you hate your body, I'm Mexican, and so a lot of our traditions, my mother's traditions, were based in home remedies, and so I didn't suffer from that sort of pain, but I know plenty of friends who are disconnected from that way of healing themselves, and through diet and through herbal medicine that we've lost through the ages.
Wow, that's some valuable knowledge to pass
Yeah,
on.
there are doctors right now out there who, like, if you look for the hashtag menstruation, you'll see all sorts of really incredible images on Instagram of people actually touching their menstrual blood. They'll like decorate themselves, will show themselves with like their panties all. Yeah, it's a lot, but it's kind of like taking back the narrative, right?
Yeah,
and that's kind of what I was trying to do with the book.
No,
I was
absolutely.
really trying to destigmatize, to rewrite the narrative that our bodies are dirty or to be feared or shamed, and
Right.
and to one that was more empowering and that was connected to a higher kind of bigger universal power, and that was really an ultimate, like a sense of inner power, but also resistance against what the dominant culture is saying. So and also in the with bringing in the gender fluid character, I was really trying to also kind of make a commentary on how we view gender. In the story, the child comes out and is embraced by the community, instead of all of the negative things that can happen and do happen to people when they reveal their true gender. And I come from a community that's particularly homophobic and very transphobic, and I wanted to challenge my community and really, I mean, the broader communities who are also transphobic and homophobic, to rethink, how we can, as a community, embrace that revelation and that blossoming, because they're both children. The two best friends are blossoming in different ways. And in the book, the community looks to the indigenous traditions, and they discover that the Ometeot was the creator god, and that was neither male or female, but both, divine duality. And that many priests, and there were temples, and many of the gods were actually dual in nature, in gender. And so it's incredibly fascinating. And so there's some evidence that shows us that there was like a full temple in like downtown Mexico City now, in El Zócalo, to Xochipilli, which is the god that was the protector of the LGBTQIA plus community. Yeah. And so our ideas of gender came with colonization, and so that, again, I was trying to kind of like plant the seed, or to challenge the community to redefine how we can be when somebody in our community blossoms into their gender in that way, and so I wanted to show a loving practice versus something that was negative and
I think harmful. Young people are way ahead of older people.
Totally.
They're they're way more together, way more accepting. So that's amazing, and such a good message, because that's a shameful and like difficult age anyway. Like even the most ridiculous things are really, really hard. Never mind
I know.
Never mind potentially having blood on your pants at school or something.
Oh, totally.
And then
Totally.
I wanted to ask you about the form because it
Yeah,
reads
sure.
really like poetry, the whole book. What do
Mm-hmm.
you, is that, is it like
Yeah.
one long poem? Would you consider it?
No, it's actually it's considered a novel in verse,
Mm-hmm. And
and
all in verse.
and
There you go.
yes, so it is a novel. You can't. I mean, you can, but you won't get as much of it out of it as it if you like flip through it and pick page 35 or whatever. You'll get a micro, like basically every poem is a chapter, is the
Mm-hmm.
equivalent of a chapter, and so
Right.
you read it just like a novel from beginning to end. And but with poetry, you have all of these really kind of accessible tools, especially for younger readers who may be reluctant to read a very thick
Yep.
book, with lots of words. And so they read something like this, and it has lots of imagery and metaphor and all of the kind of techniques that you can use with poetry, and it like lulls them in and seduces them in that way. And so, it's not for everybody.
No, it
um
really,
I,
no, it really flows. I mean, um, I'm a poet, so
oh,
I
oh,
find
cool.
that for me, if things feel always overwhelming, and poetry
Mhm.
comes more naturally because you break it down. And
Yeah,
so reading it is the same thing, really. It is
yeah,
more accessible because you look at it and you're like, oh, I'll just read this stanza. And then you're caught in and you're going to, and then you're in
yeah,
there and you're reading
yeah,
away. So yeah,
yeah.
it's really lovely.
I mean, it's a little bit of a challenge to write because you have to balance both, right? Like I just did a 3-hour workshop on how to write a novel in verse, because
Oh,
you really have to like know your toolbox, your poetic toolbox, right? All of the things that you can use in poetry, but then you also have to know story really well, and you still have to write with an arc. You have to have your inciting incident. You have to have the things that create narrative tension to pull the reader through.
mhm.
Your beginning, middle, and end, your climax, if you're following kind of straight story structure. But yeah, so you have to know that
Can I
before
ask
you
where this
but
workshop is? Can we, is it
oh,
something
oh,
that's available to people?
you know what? It was just at a conference this
Oh,
last weekend.
oh,
Last
okay.
weekend, yeah. It was, yeah, no. And I had a great time. I had a great time. I couldn't believe it was like 3 hours. I thought, no, there's no way. But basically what I did was I pulled from all of these verse novels that have been award-winning verse novels, and I showed people how to create, how a poet will a verse novelist will demonstrate character, or how to communicate conflict, and how to use like different forms, like rhyming and the villanelle or whatever, a sestina or haiku or whatever, to pull the reader through. And it depends, and how to use it as like a dramatic technique, because it's narrative, so.
And how, for people who are interested in writing novels in verse, how is, how are publishers accepting, or is it, are, because with poetry it's like, oh, it doesn't sell and no bookstores want to carry it, but
Right.
I know there is definitely some YA authors that have been
Yes,
very successful writing this, like this
totally.
style. So I'm just wondering, how did you have a relationship with the publisher? Did you just blindly submit and somebody loved it? How does that process go?
Well, no, like I didn't. Because I was homeschooling, I was reading lots of books with my children, and I realized that there are a lot of books out there that didn't reflect their reality.
Right.
And because we live in Oakland and it's a super diverse community, I wanted to write a story that was set in Oakland, that just showed their own, my children are multiracial and multicultural, and so I wanted them to be able to see that mix in the books, but you can't really see it. Like, we still have many books that are written by majority white straight male as in all of literature, but especially in children's literature. And so I think the impetus was to write a story where they saw themselves reflected. And I was I got my MFA in writing in 1999, and my first book came out in 2019.
Oh, wow.
So so 20 years. Yeah, so it's 20 years of not doing anything, not just writing and not really pursuing it, kind of dedicating myself to my children. And then so I wrote this story, but a friend who was an editor in New York, I asked her, I want to start writing for children. What do I do? And she's like, you have to join the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And so I did, and I started learning the rules about how to write for children, because they're different than when you write for adults. And I'd been writing for adults, poetry and essay and nonfiction, creative nonfiction and fiction. And so I had to kind of like learn the rules and then write the story. And actually rewrite the story, because I had written it. I went to SCBWI and I sat through a few of the workshops, and I said, oh, I got to rewrite this. So I rewrote it. And it was actually at the first National Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators conference in LA that I paid for a critique. And you can do this at certain writers conferences. So I paid for a critique. They read 10 pages. This young author, I mean, he looked like a frat boy. I walked in, he looked like he was like 19 years old, and I like had a polo shirt. It's crazy. And I looked at him, I'm like, oh my God, this young man, he's never going to understand my story about brown and queer menstruating kids in Oakland. Like, this isn't going to fly. And he had his bio was like one line, just I didn't say what he had edited, nothing. So I said all right, well, there goes $150, right? So I sat down, and he loved it. He said, I think it's time for the world to have another menstruation story. We've been, I don't know of another one right now other than Judy Blume's.
Right.
And so I worked with him, and he eventually bought that book, and within.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. And so we did discover actually that I was the first person after Judy Blume to write a book solely centered on menstruation.
Wow, that's a long time, because I grew up on Judy Blume, and I'm old.
I know. Well, I was born in 1972. Judy Blume's book came out in 1971.
Wow.
So that's nearly 50 years.
Wow. That's amazing. That is crazy.
Yeah. So if you think about that.
Yeah. That's wild.
It's wild, but it also is a testament to how powerful patriarchy has been, and the kind of like a grip it's had us under. And I think it was surprising that was the case. I didn't know it. I certainly didn't think that. I saw my child kind of blossoming, and she had these questions, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to write the story about a child who actually doesn't want to have a moon ceremony? Because my daughter and I, we practiced ceremony with other women in circle, and I knew we were going to give her a moon ceremony anyway, and she was really into it. My daughter was looking forward to it, and I thought it would be funny and create conflict, thinking as a writer, to write the opposite, and then throw in some more like middle school drama and the crushes and all that stuff.
So
anyway,
homeschooling is impressive. Everybody right now is having to do it, but you're way ahead of them.
Yeah, well, yeah, it doesn't even feel that that impressive. It feels more like, Homeschool, well, I was actually an unschooler, and I only unschooled, that bio is a couple years old. My children now both are going to Oakland School for the Arts. So they're like,
Oh,
so
yay.
yes,
Congratulations. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, they both are kind of doing their thing now, but like I unschooled, and in unschooling, you really let the child lead. You let them, figure out what they want and how they want it. And we would spend a lot of time. It was like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We'd go to different places and do different things, and I'd have them talk to different adults about what they did, and or take private lessons with this, that, or other person, because I couldn't offer everything, and they had their own interests apart from me, and the library was our friend. And so, now it just feels like a rainy day, like a month-long rainy day, and we can't really go anywhere or see anybody, and the library's closed, and it feels like Sunday or whatever. But now with the internet, it's easy. So I think if people just kind of let go of the expectation of like being regimented, then the kids are going to learn no matter what, if you let them lead.
Yeah, I had a very hard time with school in general all my life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that you have to look at alternative ways. But I'm impressed because I have a child and I was not organized enough to do that. He was super social, and I always
Oh,
he
yeah.
liked going to school. So yeah, but
Yeah.
I am and was the complete opposite. Like I hated going to school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, but how did you learn? Did you after school, when you didn't have to go, how did you learn? Through reading?
I'm a reader. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a reader.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't help me in math, but it helped me in everything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that same with my daughter. My daughter is just such a phenomenal reader. She's like voracious. In fact, she's a speed reader. She would just devour books. And now she can't do that. She can't just read whatever she wants. And math is really hard for her. But, I'm of the mind that, all of us have different strengths in our many intelligences, and that's fine, and you guys just got to do your best. If you show up, you do your work, and you get a C or a D, then that's okay, because you showed up and did the work.
That's what I thought. They didn't really agree.
No, I know. Well, I get upset when they don't do the work. Like I just say, just show up. Just do it, because that, if nothing else, that rigor of like being accountable and like saying, what, I don't know, I don't understand. That's teaching, and they're learning.
Yeah, that's true. That's
so
true. One thing I always said to my son is, I always had a problem asking for help. Just just say. Teachers will love you if you just tell them, like, it's not that I'm not interested, I just don't get this, explain it to me, or how can I improve my grade, or just like communicate with them, because I was always really shut down and afraid to communicate with my teachers. Yeah. In a constructive way, at any rate.
Yeah. So I feel like the pandemic is giving people, an opportunity, hopefully, to allow that, to see that in their children, and see where their strengths are and what their intelligences are, and if they allow them to explore and see,
Yeah, I hope that we learn a lot as a society about like not really having to get up at the crack of dawn and hustle in traffic and, go do these things and be separated from your family so much. And I think there's a whole lot of things environmentally, socially, just so much good takeaway we could get from a bad thing.
Yeah. I read this article on Medium just yesterday about, I can't remember the name, Victor. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm escaping the name of the author, but he said basically that we need to be ready to create a new world for ourselves, and be very, very strategic about what we allow back, because the mainstream corporate world is going to come back with us, at us with a vengeance, saying you need your normal, your old normal, and without any not giving us any space to reflect. And now's the time to reflect and say, you know what, I don't think I need those 25 pairs of shoes. I don't think I need, you know, this, that, or the other, you know, like, and know that you were fine, and you existed in this space, in this pause. He called it the great pause. And to just kind of go like, wait a minute, you know, and then know that you're going to be, you know, bombarded by the corporate machine that's going to be, you know, wanting you to get back to normal and
get in the rat race.
Get back to consuming and producing and hustling,
and they'll have the narrative of scarcity because you know, right, to really push on us, and you know, have a hoarding necessity.
Yeah, I know. Do you know? Can you explain to me this toilet paper thing?
I don't know.
I have no idea.
It was totally surprising to me from the gate, and yeah, I mean, I'm still using the same toilet paper I had before this all started, except I was able to get a couple single rolls from a store, and we're still fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's really one of the most bizarre things of this whole thing, you know. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I know a lot of people are hurting, and it's, you know, it's sorry. I mean, I had everything canceled through July. In fact, my next book had been selected as a middle grade book buzz book at Book Expo, which is like a kind of like winning the golden ticket. Yeah, it's a big deal because you're in front of all the booksellers across the country. But
congratulations.
Well, yes, but now it got canceled because it's in New York City, and they had moved it from the end of May to the end of July, but it's at the Javits Center. And the Javits Center is being used for coronavirus
as a
patients.
hospital.
Yeah. And so my publisher pulled out, Scholastic pulled out. And so, you know, that, I think that was a major loss. And also I was going to a conference in Barcelona in June, and that got canceled because Spain is getting just wrecked.
They are, yeah.
You know, and so, you know, those are, you know, like on some level, I want to be like really sad for myself, but you know, all of my people are still alive and healthy, you know, and I have to just count my blessings that, you know, this is the right thing for what it is. But, and you know, I think, you know, doing something like this is really fantastic, right? Because we get to innovate, right, and push things forward, and I can tell you about my next book.
Please do.
This one.
It is Land of the Crows.
No,
Land. Sorry, I'm getting a glare. I can see it now.
Yeah. Sorry, you can see it.
Land of the Cranes.
It's also. Oh, sorry. My son is really into origami. He made a heart and a crane inside a heart bookmark for me. So anyway, so it's also in verse, but this one's going to have very small illustrations throughout.
Are you doing them?
No, the same illustrators who did this, the cover.
Beautiful.
Juan and Lian, they're doing it. But anyway, so it's also in verse, and I just show you this because it's yeah. And so, but that one is a really different book. That book, The Moon Within, although it had very kind of like political, like it had my political agenda. This one has a different kind of political agenda, but the first one was very light. It's a very sweet kind of light book, you know, and funny, and this one is totally different. This one's very sad. And it's about a little girl whose family had been fleeing cartel violence in Mexico, and they were living in the United States since she was a baby. And she, her father had been telling her about this prophecy that the Aztecs came from a place called Aslan, and which is considered like the western United States. And
Right.
in the prophecy, it said that they would go down to found their city in the navel of the universe, where they saw an eagle devouring a serpent on a cactus, and that's where they established their great city. But the prophecy also said that one day they would come back to live in Aslan, and Aslan has been translated as the land of the cranes. And
Oh, okay.
so that's why, and so he tells her that she is a crane, that they are cranes that have come back home to their home.
Oh,
To their
how lovely.
and
That's some really important knowledge for kids to start out with.
Yeah.
I wish I had known, because I did a whole podcast on about the American dirt
totally.
controversy, and so it will be a book that I'll say, here's a book you should read instead, and educate yourself and support an actual Mexican American Oakland writer.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I was undocumented as a child. I was born in Mexico, and I was brought over when I was 9 months old.
Mm-hmm.
So and we lived undocumented till I was 12.
Wow. So.
Yeah, my younger sister was born, and because of the laws back in the 70s, we were able to apply for residency right after she was born. And so we got, but it took till I was 12 years old for us to get our green card.
No, these people that think it's something you just go and do, like you have no idea how difficult it is and how long it takes. Yeah, it's really
and so I, it comes from my experience, but I was never in a detention center. And so vis-a-vis this American dirt controversy, as writers, I think it's our absolute right to be able to write outside our experience, right? We want to be able to use our imaginations. But I think when our writing is hurtful and isn't accurate of what we're trying to portray, then it's a failure. It's a failure of craft, really, because as a writer, you haven't done your job.
Yeah.
You haven't done your job. And so I really feel like that was her biggest mistake, that she didn't do her homework.
That's what I've heard from writers. I did not read it because that would have required me to purchase it, and I'd much rather spend my money and buy all your books. And I really look forward to giving them as gifts to young people in my life, because I think if people understood the history, they would have much less attachment to this stupid ass border that really that landed on the people rather than the people landing on it, right? I mean, I think, if anything like that I read growing up about Native Americans or something like that had formed my worldview, right? I was never rooting for the cowboy because my parents kept lots of work by Native Americans around, and that was, like, clearly we're on borrowed land. It's not, the other way around. So I just use that as an example of when you are starting life with your mind open about gender and about, the history and what that actually means, what that actually looks like. What's the difference between somebody living here and there? I mean, it's just, it gets to be this, everything has to be turned into some fear thing, right? They're coming.
For sure.
They're coming. They're not coming. They've always been here. So
exactly. And and I think that, like for me, with the reason why I write for children right now, why I'm writing for children, is because I feel a duty to not only show children about history and these kind of like undercurrents that are damaging, these current narratives that are damaging to us, but I wanted to show children, that that are not from my community
Mhm.
about empathy, right? And
Yeah.
I wanted to show children, you know, every child about agency. Like
Right.
who are you and what can you do to make a change? And that's really kind of you know what both stories about, you know, that girl has to make the right decision on her own, right? She has to make the right decision. This child is the same thing. She's a poet. The little girl's a poet, and she writes these picture poems to her dad, who's been deported to Mexico. And she and her mother try and go to see him at Friendship Park in San Diego, but they miss the exit and end up in Tijuana, and they try to come back, and then they're detained. And so that's how she ends up in a detention center. And so while she's in the detention center, she writes these picture poems to her dad. And so yeah, so the whole story takes place inside the detention center.
Wow.
And but again, you know, it was my attempt to show children, like, you know what, even though you are in a situation that you largely have no control over, you still have agency. You still can do something. You know, you still can be your own light. And you know, I know that's very idealistic of me, but that's but I try and be you know, an activist through my writing. You know, I want children to really think. And I, you know, I feel like when somebody writes for children with these kinds of messages, you're really attempting at enacting revolution, right? You're revolutionizing these children's
Absolutely.
minds. And
Absolutely.
so I don't, it's a responsibility that I take and that I see, and I try and give it all I can. I don't know if I'll ever write for adults again, but
Well, there's more than just the story of the crane. There's
right,
the land of the cranes.
yeah.
Tell me about the other book, and when's that
Oh,
expected
okay.
to come?
So that one is expected to come in 2022, and that one is pretty awesome. It's called Jovita Wore Pants, and it's about it's the real title is Jovita Wore Pants: The Story of a Revolutionary Fighter. It's a long title, but it's about Jovita Valdovinos, who was a woman who lived in the 40s, who dressed as a man and commanded a battalion of about 80 men in the Mexican Sierras, and she was fighting for religious freedom. After the Mexican Revolution with Pancho Villa and, you know, and Zapata and all that, it was a land reform of revolution, and the Catholic Church had a lot of land, and so the new socialist government took back the land from the Catholic Church and closed down the churches and started killing priests and not allowing anybody to practice religion. In fact, it's against the law to practice religion in Mexico, and it's an article in their constitution that still is current today. It's
Wow.
still legally against the law to practice religion, but nobody enforces it.
Right.
So anyway, so after that first revolution, a lot of peasants, including indigenous people who were also outlawed to practice their religions, they rose up against the government, the new socialist government, and their battle cry was, you know, freedom of religion, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So the Jovita got swept up in it because her father was a colonel or a general in the revolution, and then she was raped and beaten and shot at when she tried to escape.
Oof.
And yeah, so she was very wounded by the revolution, the fight for freedom of religion. And so when her father was killed and her two brothers were killed, she decided to take up arms and cut her hair and dress like a man and just go for it anyway. And so it's all based on this book. It's like there was only 1,000 copies made.
Oh, wow.
And it's her memoir that she
wow.
wrote.
How cool is that?
Yeah. and she was my distant great aunt. And
Wow.
yeah, my
Awesome.
grandfather, my grandfather was a revolutionary with her. And so they, so my mom knew her, and so that's how I learned of Jovita. And so I had to write a picture book, which is like, geez, little tiny story that doesn't talk about the rape, that doesn't talk about all the stuff, but still.
But no, if you learn her name, you will find the other information. You'll find out more. I mean, because I certainly never heard it, and now I'm already hooked. So I'll be seeking information and stories about her life. That's incredible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's and that's also, you know, again, a choice, a political choice to try and rescue somebody from obscurity, somebody as important and as powerful an image and a person as Jovita Valdovinos, you know, so that her contribution as a woman is not forgotten. Cute.
I'm not doing that.
I want a pet so badly. I can't even tell you right now.
Oh, they're such a good company right now. They are. Yeah, except when they bark.
My husband said no. That's okay.
That's okay. Your husband
I said that's okay. It's a happy bark.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, not just for coming on the podcast, but for the amazing work that you're doing. I think that you're raising wonderful humans, it sounds like, and then you're sharing the wealth with all of the young humans.
I'm trying my best.
I love it. I appreciate it so, so much. And I'm very grateful to Peggy Morrison for turning me on to your book. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, and I hope that maybe, you know, one day the book club will be able to read it.
Definitely.
One or the other.
Definitely. Yes, and do a reading or something also. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we will.
We'll do some things.
If we're allowed.
Ever know if we can.
Yeah.
But
well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate you, and it was really nice meeting you and talking to you.
All right, take care.
Okay.
Bye everyone.
Bye.